Hello and welcome to the Premier Football Podcast. I'm Rafe Garland and I'm joined here in studio as always by the wonderfully articulate Joseph Doherty. How are you today, Joe?
That's better than what you were originally going for.
We'll stick with it.
I'm well, Rafe. Thanks. How about yourself?
Joe, I'm good and I'm bad. I'll tell you the truth. I'm delighted because Liverpool going into the international break are 8 points clear of second place Leicester.
Right.
And I mean, if someone had told you that at the start of the season, I don't think you would have believed them.
What, that Leicester are second place?
And that Liverpool are 8 points clear at this stage.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted with that. But like I said, we're coming into an international break, and not just any international break, a 2-week long international break.
Yeah.
We will try to keep our show relevant to the Premier League for at least 60-70% of it today, and then we'll have a quick look at some of the European competitions that are taking place. Not necessarily the fixtures, but the competition itself, and just give a couple of our thoughts as to how we feel about it. So on today's show, there are a few things that we want to talk about. We want to talk a little bit about obviously the Raheem Sterling Joe Gomez bust up. We're going to have a quick look at, well, I say a quick look, we might actually have an in-depth look at some of the major transfers in and out of the Premier League over the summer and see how the transfers have got on.
Yeah.
We will have a look at, like I said, the European qualifiers and the European Championships in general. And as always, guys, we'll be doing our weekly VAR watch and giving our 2 cents on what is without a doubt the worst part of the English game at the minute. Look, there's only one place to start, Joe. Raheem Sterling allegedly grabbed Joe Gomez by the throat in the England canteen on Monday, the day after obviously a heated game with Manchester City, with Liverpool playing for Manchester City, and he has been left out of the Montenegro squad, or the squad to play Montenegro, by Gareth Southgate. What were your initial reactions when you heard the story breaking?
For a start, I wasn't surprised because from watching the game on Sunday, you could see that there was something left in that, like that. Sterling seemed pretty incensed for whatever reason, and Gomez had just kind of thrown him away. It was pretty embarrassing for him. So it seemed like they didn't settle their differences on the field or whatever, and the fact that they're meeting up again so soon after, it's it's not the best time to be coming into contact with someone again. So I wasn't surprised to hear that something had happened.
It was said though that they'd shaken hands at the end of the Premier League game and they got together and that they seemed to have made amends, and Joe Gomez, this is all reports coming from who really knows where, Joe Gomez was said to go in quite overly friendly to Raheem Sterling on Monday and try to hug him, and maybe Raheem just thought he was taking the piss, trying to rub it in or something. He took it personally. Obviously there was a lot going around Twitter and social media about that, about him picking him up like a small child essentially, and moving him away. And maybe when he watched that back, he was quite offended by it.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, so it seemed maybe it had settled and then it kind of flared back up again. I mean, Raheem Sterling had a torrid time at the hands of the Liverpool crowd, the Anfield crowd.
Yeah, to be expected.
Yeah, his blood really was boiling during the game. He was one of City's best players, I think, on the day. And he seemed to be the only one that had the drive and the ambition to actually go forwards and try anything. Southgate has said that he would have dropped him had it been any other game as well. No matter what the game was, if it was a big competition game against France or whoever it might be, he would have been left out of the team as well. What do you think about how Southgate has handled the situation?
I think he's handled it poorly. I actually don't doubt that he would have dropped him anyway, because even though it's a Euro qualifier against Montenegro, it's the 1,000th game that England have played. So that's
at Wembley,
yeah. It's a historic event in itself, and you'd like to think that you'd pick.
Well, that's a mad number of games, isn't it?
It is. It's a lot, isn't it? It's huge.
It's massive.
yeah. But yeah, I think that these things are, like, you know yourself, like in any walk of life, in work or whatever, you might have not necessarily a bust up or a fight, but you could have a heated discussion, argument with a colleague, and you just have to get on with it. Like you can't be, unless there's something like is seriously bad done, then I don't think that there's cause to ban a player for a match. Like it's, and especially in football where things do flare up, like training ground incidents, they're reported all of the time, And the best thing is to just pull the players apart and then let them, after they've cooled off. You know how it is after you have an argument with someone. After you cool off, you're grand. You can be best mates together the next kind of 10, 15 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. But I mean, the confrontation was the day after the game. It wasn't after a big tackle in training. It wasn't a flashpoint. That was in the spirit of the moment. I mean, Raheem would have gone home and he would have sulked and he would have thought about everything that he'd done wrong in the game. Would have thought about all that stick that he got. He would have watched those memes or gifs of him getting pushed around. And he would have come in absolutely fuming again. I know you have these disputes everywhere you go, but I mean, it is a workplace at the end of the day. Gareth Southgate has highlighted that the biggest, not the biggest issue he's had, but one of his main principles is togetherness in the squad. And you hear so many former England players talk about how rivalries in the changing room have torn that side apart over the years.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's really trying to protect that spirit and draw a line. I know you say these things happen all the time, but I don't think that it has happened under Southgate's reign so far. I think that the players have gotten on incredibly well with each other, and this is the first time he's had to deal with it, and this is the stance that he's taking. It's zero tolerance. It's just he's not kicked him out of the squad. He's not sent him home. He's not said he's been kicked out of the leadership group. He's just saying this is wrong, and there has to be some sort of consequence for it. So it's essentially an internal 1-game ban without being removed from the squad. It's the most minor actual punishment that he could give in theory, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You actually make a fair point there, and every manager is entitled to manage and discipline their players in whatever way they see fit. There's no one right or wrong way to do it. I just think these things can easily be dealt with internally. Like once you send a player home, then you're feeding him to the press. Like especially a player like Raheem Sterling, who's had such a tired time in the press through no fault of his own in the past, is that if he gets sent home for an incident like this, then all eyes are on him, and he's putting him under the spotlight for the wrong reasons. When with everything he's been through in the English press, I don't think that that's necessarily something that he needs added to him. And again, if we talk about management, there are players and people who are special cases, and you have to be able to deal with each and every person individually. Saying that, I don't know Raheem Sterling personally. No. Gareth Southgate clearly does. So
the other thing, the other side of that coin is that I suppose that there are two players involved. Though it's not just about Raheem Sterling.
He did say that if you could say that Raheem Sterling was overly aggressive, then you couldn't say the same about Joe Gomez.
No, well, I think Gareth came out and identified that that Raheem was in the wrong and that Joe wasn't. That one had flared up and one hadn't. And that's why it was being taken this way. And the thing about Joe Gomez, he apparently went to Southgate and said that he didn't want any action to be taken. You know, he wasn't the one that was out of line about this. Southgate had a meeting with the senior players in the England squad, and together they came to the decision that he should be banned for a game.
It sounds like Unai Emery.
It does sound like Unai Emery. I know he didn't want to talk about Arsenal, but I mean, how much is Raheem Sterling going to be upset with his fellow England teammates now, the Jordan Hendersons, the Harry Kanes of the group, that have sat down with the gaffer and said, yeah, my boy needs to be banned.
I could just see Harry Kane and Gareth Southgate talking together and coming to that conclusion. Fucking hell, what a joke. Nah, not having that. The manager makes the decisions. I'm all for consulting with others and taking your staff's point of view on board. At the end, like.
But does Southgate have to stamp out this kind of behaviour in the camp? Does he have to get rid of these rivalries? Well, does he not have to do something?
Yeah, you can't have.
You say you could deal with it internally, but how? How does he keep it out of the newspaper?
Clearly, Joe Gomez has been making an effort to reconcile with Raheem Sterling and to patch things up. And from what I've heard, that after the incident took place, Raheem Sterling was as well. So just let them sort it out themselves. Like I said, don't feed Raheem Sterling, excuse me, to the English media.
No, you don't have to. But I mean,
don't let him, like, in going to his senior players and asking for their opinion and then coming to the same decision.
Yeah.
Whether they came to that collectively in the end or whether it was just Southgate.
Yeah. I mean, it was Ben Chilwell that came out and said, or no, sorry, it was Danny Rose, I think, that came out and said that the players all sat down and talked about it and came to that decision together.
Again, this is, I really didn't want to talk about Arsenal, but it's the best comparison in current times. Again, when the captaincy vote was talked about, Rob Holding came out to the media. So it's not the manager coming out; it's the player being instructed to go out and say this. Like, it's strange that they clearly want to leak it to the media, and they want the player to leak it to the media.
They're trying to be clever and they're trying to get out in front of it,
but they're not.
So it doesn't become a scandal. Raheem Sterling bust up, covered up by Southgate, and then if it is the first time it's happened under Southgate, this is the line. He's saying that you can't let it brew over. You can't put hands on another pro, and that's the line he's drawn in the sand with this. Whereas if he let it slide, you know what I mean. Next time out, United play Liverpool, or United play Chelsea, or Arsenal play Spurs, and something kicks off. Not that there are any Arsenal players in the England team.
No, since Danny Welbeck.
But someone kicks off in a grudge game, and suddenly people are allowed to carry it into the international changing room. Mm-hmm. If this genuinely is the biggest task that this England team are facing, is putting aside these rivalries, does he need to take action, or can he leave it to the lads to sort them out? Or
he can leave it to the lads to sort themselves out. It's because he's been involved when he was playing late 1990s and early 2000s, when he was getting capped for England and being called up to squads. That was when they were at their worst in terms of the big name players that they had. You think of the Alan Shearers and David Beckhams in the late 1990s, and then Lampard and Gerrard, Scholes, etc. Early
Carragher as well.
All of them. The golden era of English football, and through his experience, he has seen one way, so he's going the complete opposite. But there's always a middle ground in these situations.
There was talk that Raheem Sterling had actually packed his bags and was leaving St George's Park. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
St George's Park, and essentially walking away from the England camp until Jordan Henderson, of all people, reached out to him and clawed him back. Obviously, they've known each other from their time at Liverpool, and he's a perfect middleman. And
he's vice captain as well.
Yeah, vice captain of the England team, captain of the Liverpool team. They'd have a personal relationship. He managed to convince him to stay. Is that just Sterling reacting in the heat of the moment, or do you think that's something that could boil over further?
Potentially, I think it was probably something reactionary.
The message coming from the players seems to be that it's all behind them anyway, and they're all looking to move on and put it behind them.
Yeah, but he needed to be banned for one game for losing his temper.
There was a line that he crossed
in a restaurant
in the canteen. It was a private players' area, but I mean, it wasn't on the pitch. It wasn't reactionary to.
No, I get that. It's not like a tackle.
It's a more formal environment.
It's like, think about it like in school. Like if you'd had an argument with someone on the football pitch the day before, and then when you see each other in the canteen and you go up and you chuck a plate in his head or something like that,
it's entirely different.
Yeah, it is, and you're bringing up something that you might necessarily have thought was done with.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't have sympathy for Raheem Sterling in that regard, because I don't think that you should be starting shit in a canteen. Just talk about it. I'm all for talking. I'm not a violent guy.
I know you're not, Joe. I know you're not. Someone else who has made the headlines this week for walking away from their team is Cristiano Ronaldo. I was talking to you before the show, and I don't think you've heard this story, which is fantastic. So Ronaldo was subbed off in Juve's game last week. For the life of me, I can't remember who they were playing, but Paulo Dybala came on for him anyway, and Dybala went on to score the winner in the game. It's the second time in 2 weeks that Ronaldo's been subbed, and his replacement has gone on to score the winner. But apparently 54 minutes into the game, Ronaldo went straight to the changing room, packed his bag and walked out of the stadium.
Right.
And just left.
Yeah, just fucked off.
Can you sympathise with that, Joe?
Not really. No, not really. I don't think that you should just be walking straight down the tunnel, packing your bags and going away. Like, you have responsibility to your players, to your colleagues, to go and sit on that bench and watch the end of the game and clap them off. Like, you're all in it together just because you're the best player.
At least to hang around for the chat in the changing room afterwards.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've seen so many players head straight down the changing room, but I mean, to actually leave the stadium, like, I heard another Italian player, who was it? It was a Lazio or Roma player, saying that they had a similar issue a few years ago, that they actually left the stadium early and were instantly called back to do a drugs test.
Right.
after 90 minutes. So they were maybe about 25 minutes away, and they had to peg it back to the ground to do a drugs test afterwards. So I don't know if he left himself open to a potential issue there. I haven't heard anything about it this week.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine it was all okay in the end. But where can he come back? Ronaldo's never really been subbed off before.
No, he's not. That's but like, although you might not necessarily have been subbed off before, and although your profile is like as big as his is, and you don't get bigger than Cristiano Ronaldo, you still have to understand that if the manager wants to take you off, then he wants to take you off. Don't be happy about it. Like, imagine being happy about being taken off. Of course not. But at the same time, you have to have that respect for your manager and for your fellow players, and just get off the pitch and go and sit on the bench. Like, it's really childish. It's really petty. Xhaka did it however long ago, and I was screaming for his head. Like,
he did something similar, but it was worse in a way. The captain's armband hit the floor.
Yeah. It was worse in two ways, because he was booed off by his own.
He also told the fans to fuck off.
He told them to fuck off through the captain's armband on his was worse, but he still fucked off out of the stadium. Like Ronaldo doing the same thing. You can't do that.
Did he leave the stadium?
Xhaka.
Surely he must have waited in the changing room.
No, he left the stadium.
But surely you can't leave the stadium though. Surely there are drugs tests.
He left the stadium.
Did he?
Yeah. That was what
I didn't know that.
Saying. Yeah. He went into the changing room. I suppose kicked a load of shit.
The way you do when you get out playing cricket.
Oh dear God! Broken bats, broken windows, the lot. He went. He fucked off, just like Ronaldo.
That's interesting. Okay. We'll need to watch that. We'll keep an eye on that for the people watching us and listening to us at home. We'll bring you updates on players that leave the stadium early. It'll be a little piece that we keep an eye on.
Yeah.
People, I'm not sure that it will happen again anytime soon, because it is quite bizarre.
Overly reactionary players.
Yeah, I suppose. Right, we will move on from reactionary players to our reactions on players.
Yeah.
The flops and the hits, the transfers in and out of the Premier League. Maybe it'd be fun to throw these ones back and forth.
Sure.
We can kind of throw a name at each other and see how we go. So I'm going to get us started with a Premier League signing this year. I'm going to talk about someone that you've had a lot of fun talking about this week, Joe, Christian Pulisic.
Yeah, I did have a lot of fun talking about Christian Pulisic yesterday.
Yeah. This would be a great time to put up an ad on YouTube for Joe's Corner about Christian Pulisic.
Yeah. I think he's clearly been a hit, hasn't he?
Absolutely.
But if you said that a month ago, you would have said he's been a flop.
Well, he really struggled to break into the team.
I think it was how Lampard embedded him into the team. Like, we still have to remember he's very young. He's 21. Like, he had, I think it was 3 full seasons at Borussia Dortmund before he moved to Chelsea. And although that's a very high level of football, no doubt Champions League and Bundesliga, it's not the Premier League. Nothing is the Premier League. The Premier League is in terms of intensity and the physicality of the games.
I'm not convinced that Lampard had full faith in Mason Mount at the start of the year as a number 10. He started the year wide on that left position that Pulisic has obviously come into, as Mount has dropped into a traditional number 10. I know Callum Hudson-Odoi is looking to get into the team on the wing as well. Willian was wearing the armband last week for Chelsea, and he's signed a new deal, so he's obviously a huge part of their team.
He's taken the number 10 as well from Hazard.
Yeah, so he's obviously going to be focal for the next year or two. And then on the left hand side, there's going to be Pulisic and Callum Hudson-Odoi fighting it out for a spot. Do you think Callum Hudson-Odoi is one of these players that might move on? Actually, I know we're talking about other players, but he was obviously linked with a big move to Bayern Munich last year.
Yeah,
and maybe under the Lampard revival, thought he might get a few more games. Is he going to be rotated with Pulisic through the year? Will that be enough for him?
If Pulisic continues this form, then he has to start every week, doesn't he? You can't drop a winger who's
scoring 2 goals a game.
That's the thing. He's got 5 in his last 3 games. You can't drop a winger who's scoring at that rate. Hudson-Odoi, he handed in a transfer request, didn't he?
Last year, yeah.
Yeah.
Under Sarri, and I don't think a lot of players are happy under Sarri.
No. Although they finished third and won the Europa League, it's hardly a poor season, but just the overall.
I think the mood.
That's it. I was just going to say the vibe, the atmosphere that was coming out of Chelsea was incredibly negative last year, and it really was just because rivals Spurs and Arsenal fell away so dramatically, and they.
I mean, have a look at Chelsea this year. They're currently third.
Yeah.
Where they finished last year.
I think is joint second.
Joint second.
Yeah.
They will finish behind City. City
will
City
finish
and Liverpool
second.
finish 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And Chelsea will finish third or fourth. So they're gonna have a similar season to last year in terms of domestic success. And I don't think they're gonna win anything in Europe.
No, they're not. They're not.
They have been knocked out of the League Cup. And they obviously are still in the FA Cup. So, I mean, unless they win the FA Cup and finish second, they can't have a better season than last year.
No, I know. That's what I was saying. Like,
they could win the Champions League. It looks highly unlikely at this stage, but I mean,
I wouldn't put money on it.
Neither would I.
No, you really wouldn't. They're not one of the favourites. But I mean, the thing about Lampard in comparison to Sarri is that Sarri's approach was so stale. It was so boring. He couldn't get the best out of his favourite player, which was Jorginho. But since Lampard's come in, Jorginho looks a completely different player. He's
not playing him as a number 6. He's playing
him just a little bit further forward. But I think that his favourite position before, when he was playing for Napoli under Sarri, was as a number 6. Like that's what he's
playing in Italy now.
Yeah, it's a completely different.
He was allowed to play much more forward passes, whereas Sarri warned him about playing forward passes last year. He was instructed to only pass the ball backwards and sideways. The way Henderson was told for 2 years under Klopp was to only pass it backwards and sideways.
Yeah, but for different reasons.
One was more limited than the other.
Exactly.
Well, hang on, we say that, but I'll stand by the message I sent you the other day. That Jordan Henderson is a better crosser of the ball than David Beckham.
Absolute bullshit. David Beckham is the best crosser of the ball we've ever seen in the Premier League, and I'm not having that.
Fair enough.
We could put a poll up. I'd be very happy to put a poll up on
Twitter. We've got a lot of Liverpool fans on Twitter.
Yeah, but they're not naive. Well, Beckham did play for Manchester United. Fucking Liverpool fans. I do enjoy Liverpool fans.
Man, they're the best. Your dad's a Liverpool fan. Your best mate's a Liverpool fan.
Both of them are true. Is my son a Liverpool fan?
He's gonna be. Best team in the world, man.
Sure.
Alright. Throw a name at me. Signing.
I'm gonna go for Pepe.
Oh, Nicola Pepe.
Yeah, right off the bat.
Right. I think the jury is very much still out on him, only because he's so young. Look, he has to go down as a flop for now. It has taken so many great players time to settle in the Premier League. So many great players, and you can't judge him on how he's performed either in this Arsenal team, because you look around at a few of the quality players in the Arsenal team that aren't performing this year as well.
Your Lacazettes, your Ozils, even Aubameyang the last few games.
Well, look, Aubameyang, he's still finding the back of the net more consistently, but the output aside from everyone aside from Leno and Aubameyang seems way down on last year.
Yeah. But I think we could put that down to one man. And again, I'm sure at some stage...
That's obviously the senior pros, not the young guys coming through.
Yeah. I think we could put that down to Emery. And I'm sure when he gets sacked, we can do a feature piece on him. But, like...
Pepe, as a young player, coming from France to England, into a changing room as divided as Arsenal, under a coach as divisive as Emery, with a fan base so divided on everything.
Yeah.
It can't be easy for him to block it all out and just focus on the football.
It's hardly ideal, is it?
It's a whole life change. Like, we lived abroad when we were in our early 20s, and it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to adjust to. I mean, when you're with good friends, it can be easy, and when you're kind of more isolated on your own, it can be much harder.
Yeah. And
coming into a new environment, now I know there are lots of French speakers in the Arsenal changing room, but they're in the middle of a civil war. I mean, it's not necessarily a great introduction to English football, and I think he's played too many minutes as well. I think he's been too heavily relied on.
Well, the thing is, I think that when he was playing a lot of minutes in starting games, he didn't necessarily deserve to be, and then after he actually came on in the Europa League and won the game for us by the scruff of the neck, scoring 2 free kicks. He was immediately taken out of the team after that. And I think that's the wrong approach. Like, after someone goes and wins a game and gets his confidence up, play him again.
Yeah, I know,
Like,
but at the same time, you say 2 free kicks though. I mean, how many free kicks is he going to score this season? Well, he might score a few if he takes them like that every week.
No,
but
his set piece deliveries are fantastic.
Surely it's open play you want to focus on though.
It is.
His figures in open play are incredibly disappointing. Maybe for people that saw the price tag and saw some of the YouTube videos and the flashy stuff that he did in France last year. But he's still so raw.
But what's wrong with scoring free kicks?
There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there are lots of players that can score great free kicks though. Well, maybe they're all quality players. Yeah, actually, if Arsenal want to play that way and try buy some free kicks at the edge of the box and focus all of their attention around buying free kicks 25 to 30 yards out, that's fantastic. Play Mesut Ozil every week, he'll buy a few. But that's not the way they seem to play it. They seem to play very... I don't even know. Do you know how they play?
No. Well,
I want to say they play a very direct style of football,
No,
but they don't.
no, they don't.
They don't play a possession game of football though either.
Arsenal have created the 10th most chances in the league, and in terms of shots on goal, they've conceded the 3rd most. So make of that what you will. Arsenal invite pressure,
Yeah.
and Arsenal don't create chances. In the last 3 games, Aubameyang has had 2 shots on goal. 2 shots in the last 3 games, and after the 50th minute in the last 2 games, we've had 1 shot on target in each. Sorry, not a shot on target in each.
Yeah, and obviously playing as a forward in a team like that is incredibly difficult when you know that you're not going to get as much of the ball as you want. You're not going to have consistent chances set up for you. Maybe there's more pressure on you to take chances when they do arrive, because you know you're only going to get 1 or 2 a game max. I mean, if they're not creating shots on target, they're not creating genuine chances. Well, you could create a genuine chance and have a shot on target. Look at Marcus Rashford last week. Did you see his miss?
No, I didn't.
Mate, Rashford missed an absolute sitter. Yeah. An absolute sitter. You've obviously not been on Twitter either. There were maybe 7 yards out, squared ball to him, and he sliced it off his heel trying to instep it.
Oh dear.
And yeah, 2/3 of the goal to aim at. Keeper's on the far side of the goal, and he pulled it wide. It's really, really poor if you can get a chance to look at it.
Yeah, I will.
Speaking of Manchester United, slabhead Maguire.
It's been kind of a unglamorous start for such a glamorous price tag. Like, there's not been a huge amount to talk about, either good or bad. I'd say he's been fine, hasn't he? Has he lived up to £80 million? Definitely not. From their league position and their style of play, and how well Leicester have progressed.
United signed Leicester's 3rd best centre back, by the looks of things, for £80 million. Was it 80 million euro? 80 million pounds.
80 million pounds.
80 million pounds for Leicester City's 3rd choice centre back.
They could have got Johnny Evans back for a fraction of that.
Sunuku has come out of nowhere though this year.
Sunuku is a breath of fresh air. It kills me that Arsenal didn't actually sign him when they were linked to him. But Maguire...
Oh, sorry. I know we want to talk about Maguire, we will, but when you talk about Arsenal being linked to players and not signing them, I light bulb went off. Did you hear that Arsenal had a deal agreed with Riyad Mahrez?
I did.
After the 15-16 season.
I did, and Leicester blocked the move. So Arsenal's plan, after capitulating and not winning the league when they should have done, and all credit to Leicester, because to be honest they deserved it that year and it was a great story for football, but Arsenal moved for Vardy and Mahrez and they got neither. Mahrez wanted to go and Vardy didn't want to go. Vardy had a release clause, I think, in his contract of about £22 million, something like that. We activated it and he said,
nah,
jog
do
on.
one, lads.
And
well, that's fair enough for him, but I mean, Riyad Mahrez finally got his dream move to Manchester City.
I don't think it was his dream move, really. I think it was the first big club that... he knows that he's not elite enough to play... I think he's quality. I think he's really, really good, but he's not like...
But man, I think he is good enough to play for any of the best sides.
Do you think he's good enough to play for Manchester City every week?
He's just unfortunate enough to come to play in that team that are so strong in that position. I mean, Bernardo Silva seems to move in and out of there and central midfield any given week. Raheem Sterling switches between the right and the left every second week.
And then they have Sané, who's injured at the moment. The problem that Mahrez has, which he finds at City, is that the manager demands so much of the front three in terms of work rate. He'd find it at Liverpool as well,
Yeah.
and he wouldn't find it at Arsenal, which is a problem with Arsenal. And I don't want to call it a problem with Mahrez himself, because he's a wonderful footballer, but he's not the type to bust a gut like.
But he could play on the right wing for Barcelona when Messi moves on.
He would probably do very well there. Yeah.
I think he'd do incredibly well there. I mean, he is good. He's that good.
Yeah. No, he's a quality player. We've seen that time and again.
Back to Slabhead. Anyway,
Slava Maguire.
flop or hit?
Jury's out.
I mean, have a look at Chris Smalling.
This is the thing. I think that sometimes you just need to really, really, really go out of your comfort zone, and he's done that moving to Roma, and he seems to be.
He's
putting
flourished
trees over there. Yeah, there's talk of him being given an England recall. I don't think it'll happen because Southgate didn't pick him even when he was playing for United, and if Southgate doesn't like a player, he doesn't like a player, but he probably deserves it. And it'd be nice to have someone who's playing in a different league play for the English team, like especially in a league like Serie A, where there's such a demand and a focus on defending, and defending is like what the league is renowned for. Where
It always has been, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great. It's good to see. Like, even though we're rival fans, it's nice to see someone who was ridiculed go and get out of their comfort zone and do well. Like, you can.
It is, but I mean, if United are letting players like Chris Smalling go, who's being praised as one of the best players in the Italian league this year, they're spending £80 million on Harry Maguire, who's looking worse. I'm going to say he looks worse than he did last year for Leicester.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
And Leicester are flourishing without him. I mean, it seems like awful business all round. Does it not?
Yeah, it does.
People said that they needed to sign a big centre half, and I know Maguire was coveted over the summer. He's England's first choice centre half, which I don't think will last forever. We spoke about Joe Gomez earlier, and I think that part of the reason Southgate really wanted to try to protect him was because there's an England team going to be built around him at the back.
Yeah, but at the same time, Raheem Sterling's their best player. He's the one who should be.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're conceding a couple of goals every game, you're always fighting an uphill battle. Whereas if you can have a couple of quality centre halves, and you're never going to concede.
That's true. John Stones is also. I'd say John Stones is his main man at the back. I'd say.
Is he?
Yeah, I'd say he's the number one guy. But with Maguire, I still think it's too early to say that he's been a flop. Like he's barely.
Again, we spoke about the how difficult it is to perform at Arsenal at the minute, and it's obviously difficult to make headlines at United at the minute as well, considering everything that's going on there. The way the midfield is playing in front of them, the amount of cover that they're getting. I know McTominay is doing a brilliant job playing as the more defensive role, and they're actually keeping more clean sheets this year than they did last year. But I mean, with everything, it's the reverse to Pepe. With everything going on in front of them, it must be very tough defending, knowing that any mistake you make is going to lose you the game because your forwards aren't going to get any goals.
Yeah.
With the reverse to Pepe, knowing that if you miss, your backline are going to concede 3 or 4. It's going to be. There's a lot more pressure on.
I was just going to say, there's a lot of pressure in those type of moves. But you think of Van Dijk, who Liverpool were scoring tons of goals, but they were conceding tons of goals, and the remit was that this is the guy to stop the goals going in.
Yeah,
and he has absolutely thrived.
Yeah, but they did change their system though as well, and they did actively try to stop conceding goals. And now the dangerous thing about Liverpool is that everybody in the team trusts the other side. You know what I mean? The defence trusts the attack and the attack trusts the defence. And there's no pressure on the forwards to score goals. They know they can score 1 a game, and if they need them to, the back four will give them a shutout. The defenders know that even if they slip up, there's a good chance the forwards will get 2 or 3.
Yeah. But that's
the nature of confidence.
They've got themselves into that situation over a number of years. Probably the last 3 years in particular, we've seen huge.
Well, it's since Klopp came in, the build year by year.
It is, but in particular that season when Van Dijk came in, and that was clearly his plan during the summer, and he didn't get him.
He didn't get him. Is that how it works?
Didn't they get fined? Southampton reported Liverpool to the Premier League.
Yeah, for tapping him up. And I think they did either give an official apology in the end. They may have been fined.
They gave an official apology, and then they went back in and offered the same amount of money.
Did the exact same thing because they'd already tapped him up. Yeah. He already knew where he was going.
Well, of course. Is it?
Southampton, I think, squeezed a few more quid out of it through the whole operation. So
Did they? It went up. I remember it being about 70 to begin with. I don't think they squeezed too much more out of them.
yeah. Well, I don't know. They kept him for another half a season and kept him up a little bit longer.
I never get that. Like when a player's being tapped up and it's obvious that, like the Mahrez situation, like his productivity fell off a cliff the season.
Yeah,
after.
and he couldn't get in the team a lot of weeks as well because of it.
Like exactly. Like if a player.
For example, Torreira at
Yeah,
Arsenal.
yeah.
You're saying sell him, get him out of there.
I would say get rid. Absolutely.
But I mean, Joe, he's got a long contract ahead of him, and the board would take the decision not to sell him because who's going to be there longer, Torreira or Emery?
Okay? The rumor is that
If Torreira sees out his contract, who's going to be there longer, Torreira or Emery?
clearly Torreira. However, Emery is not the problem here. And that's not the whole problem. The rumours are that Torreira has handed in a transfer request. He's not happy with his playing time. He's not happy living in London. He is not adapted to life in London. So if a player after 18 months hasn't adapted to life in the country that they're supposed to be settled into, they're never going to. He had an initial period when he first signed. It was eased in, and then when he was starting games, he was really, really, really good up until he got injured around just mid to late December, and he came back in the new year, and he hasn't been the same player since. And that's included when he was played as a DM at the second half of last season. Obviously, he's been played further forward this season, and he scored a couple of goals, but it's clearly not his best position. But I don't think that he's shown enough in his in his time here. Like he had a purple patch at the start, and for the past 11 months he's been bang average. So I don't think that he's shown enough consistency to be.
But he's only young as well, though. Last year was his first season in the Premier League.
It was his first season in the Premier League.
People are expecting so much of kids coming into the Premier League, and if playing time is his biggest issue, I don't think he has to worry about that for too long.
I don't think it is. I think that that his situation and being comfortable in London is his biggest thing. I think that he's not happy, and that could be feeding into the way that he's playing and the way that he's performing and the fact that he's being asked to play a role that he's not entirely comfortable with. That's not necessarily the best for him, but at the same time, fans of Arsenal have shown and managers have shown way too much faith to players who are not quite up to it. And of course, there's a counter argument that you have to give people a chance. But at the end of the day, if he wants to go, he's done nothing to very little to show to me that he should be someone that we should be building our team around. So he can do one as far as I'm concerned if he wants to.
Fair enough. Do you want to throw another player back on me?
I'd say Tielemans.
Man, hit.
Yeah.
Absolute hit. But I mean, everyone knew at the end of last season he was going to be a hit.
Were you surprised that more clubs weren't in for him? And
I am astonished that United weren't in for him.
I'm astonished
and
that
Spurs and Arsenal.
Yeah.
With City and Liverpool, with their midfield as competitive as it is, I can understand why they didn't take him on.
Mm.
But I think that he's good enough to be at either of those clubs. I think he's that good, definitely, and he's only young as well. I am astonished that I know Chelsea had a transfer ban, so I'm not going to point the finger at them.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, they could well come in for him as well, either in January if it's lifted or in the summer if he's still there. How long do you think that they can keep hold of him?
I was just going to ask you the same question, and not in relation purely to him, but to that whole Leicester squad. Like we've seen it at Southampton in the past when Liverpool have literally cherry-picked their kind of 4 or 5 best players.
The difference is that Leicester are going to have European football next year, and
more than likely, yeah.
More than likely.
Yeah.
And if they do, they'll be at least able to keep that squad for an extra year. So, I mean, if they qualify for European football this year at Leicester, I think they'll all want another taste of it next year.
Do you think?
I think they would for one more year. I mean, they're all young and they all want to make a name for themselves. Like, surely Tielemans knows that if he goes to Arsenal or Spurs, he's going to be competing with other midfielders, established senior pros. I know he'd probably walk into the United midfield at the minute.
He'd walk into the Arsenal midfield at the moment and the Spurs midfield, for sure.
I mean, Spurs have signed Lo Celso this year. Does he drop out? We haven't seen enough for him. We'll talk about him as well.
He's coming injured. I don't think that it's fair to judge him just yet. I think that with certainly United and Arsenal, Leicester's midfield is better than both.
Player for player, Leicester's team is better than Arsenal's team. Maybe you
There's a
can
strong
move
argument for that.
Aubameyang to left wing ahead of Harvey Barnes, but he's pretty good as well.
Aubameyang is better than Vardy. Vardy's very good, but Aubameyang is better.
Who's got 11 goals in the Premier League this season?
Vardy has. Who was top goal scorer in the Premier League last year?
Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, and Aubameyang.
Yeah, and Vardy wasn't. So, who's got more goals over there?
But I mean, look at who was managing Leicester last year.
Yeah, I think I don't think that you could argue.
Look at the service that the different service that the players were getting.
Aubameyang's getting fuck all service now, and Jamie Vardy's getting about 5-10 chances a game. What I'm saying is that I don't think that you could.
Did you know that Leicester are actually the most overachieving team in the Premier League in terms of the clear
XG?
chances that they've created? They should not be anywhere near as well as they are. So actually, Jamie Vardy is finishing exceptionally well at the minute. He's not getting 5 chances a game.
Did you see?
He's the most clinical finisher in the Premier League at the minute.
I don't know if he's. I wouldn't want to go out on a limb and say that he is, because I don't know for sure. But did you see his miss against Arsenal at the back post?
No, I didn't.
The ball came in through a crowd of bodies, and he has a clear run at it, and he completely misses it and falls into the post.
Are you being a touch petty right now about Arsenal?
I'm not. I mean,
On current form.
Mrs. Sinners.
On current form.
Should we
Only
share
one
this
of
one?
them. Man, I'd love to share a point with you. On current form, only one of them. One of them. If you had to pick one of them to play tomorrow, with the other 10 players from the Leicester City team.
Do you know? You know that I love Jamie Vardy.
I know you do. You demanded that he was put in as part of the nominations for Premier League Team of the Decade.
Of course I did. I would pick Aubameyang. I think Aubameyang's an elite player. I don't think that Jamie.
Would you play Aubameyang on the left and Vardy through the middle?
That could work. I actually quite like Aubameyang on the left. He does a very good job.
So Aubameyang gets in as a left wing in Leicester's team. Aside from that, the other 10 players are Leicester players.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say.
The goalkeeper possibly.
Leno maybe, but there's not a lot between him and Schmeichel.
Well, I mean, Leno, for anyone that plays fantasy football, is obviously the best keeper in the league this year. He's made the most number of saves. Leno has made the highest number of saves. He's made more saves than Dubravka.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's insane.
I'd stick Leno in the team, and I know I had a go at him a couple of weeks ago, but I'd stick Leno in the team ahead of Schmeichel.
There's not too much of a.
And Aubameyang on the left wing. And in terms of...
I'm talking just about... We're talking just about current form. And don't get me wrong. Okay, you brought up Torreira a few moments ago. Ndidi is twice the player that he is.
Indeed.
Ndidi
We're going to run
is
a poll this week. And I want to know who is the best holding midfielder in the Premier League. Is it Kante, Ndidi or Fabinho? I know Fernandinho's not playing there at the minute, and he's been good for so long, but I think the other 3 are ahead of him this year.
Yeah, I think it's definitely those 4. Those 4 are the best.
Well, we'll definitely put Fernandinho in the poll. I mean, we wouldn't want to upset our City following, but neither of us will be voting for him. Let's put it that way.
I love Fernandinho. I actually love all of those players, to be fair. They're all quality. I'm a DM, so I have massive respect to DMs.
I got number 6 on my boots, man.
I know you do, yeah.
Yeah. Who else? We said Lo Celso, maybe not fair to talk about him just yet.
Not.
Any other big signings?
And Ndombele moved for big money.
He's not really got a game yet though either. He's only just breaking into that team. And look, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Fabinho took a long time to settle in the Liverpool team last year and to get to grips with how they wanted to play. And he's obviously being touted by us right now as possibly the best holding midfielder in the league. So it obviously isn't necessarily a bad idea to allow these players to come in slowly. Maybe the way Arsenal should be doing with Nicola Pepe. But I mean, they just have such a lack of senior players in that position to step up and do it for him that he's being thrust into it. Any other high profile ones?
Rodri went to City.
He's done alright.
He's done alright. He's no Fernandinho, but he's done alright. But he needs time to adapt. He needs time to get up to speed with the Premier League. He needs to learn off Fernandinho as well, doesn't he? He needs to learn his tricks, his shirt pulling and ankle clipping.
Definitely.
That's the key. Absolutely. To City's, one of the keys to City's success.
There was an absolutely fantastic moment where Fernandinho took out Fabinho in the City game last week, and the two of them had such a laugh and a joke about the mutual respect for that kind of tackle afterwards.
Yeah,
he was like, you got me, but I could easily have gotten you with the same thing. Like, that's just how we play.
DM to DM, 6 to 6.
Yeah, they know. Like, there's no love lost there.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other big names? Moise Keane.
Jeez, he was in a bit of trouble. He was dropped for the last game for.
Yeah, he slept in.
Yeah. Did you see the Chelsea list of fines that was thrown around on Twitter today.
No, I didn't
it's
actually. Tell me
great.
about that.
Once you get a chance, go and have a look on Twitter. It was a signed sheet. It was like framed. It was probably in their lobby in the training ground or something, signed by Lampard.
Yeah.
And it was just a list of all of the different fines that they had. It's like for being late for a meeting, you would be getting fined £500 per minute.
Fuck. Footballers, man.
And leaving for the team bus, the same. Arriving in attire that you were not instructed to wear, you were fined like £2,500. Most of the fines were £2,500, but then when it was per minute, it was like £500.
Man, that's gas.
Oh my god, some of them were just like, you'd be thinking for players who are like. I remember I mentioned Niall Ranger on a podcast a few weeks ago, and for a player like him who has poor who would be late and like might not read an email telling them exactly when to be where and what to wear. You know, those type of people who just don't keep up with kind of what they should be.
I know one man like that anyway. Yourself? Well, I know another man that we play cricket with anyway.
Oh right, yeah. So do I. But yeah, like there's some players who you wonder, like, they must be getting fined half their weekly wages a week.
Right. So we'll move on anyway, and first, I think we're going to talk about VAR before we move away from the Premier League. There were a couple of big incidents over the weekend. Obviously, there were twice big incidents at Anfield, and a third one actually with Mo Salah's goal. Have you seen? You've obviously seen the incidents, the two handballs and the offside.
Yeah.
As a Liverpool fan, I'm going to come out now and say, even though the decisions went in favour of Liverpool on the day, they absolutely ruined the spectacle. They totally wrecked it. From the minute that Sergio Aguero started appealing for the first handball, in the 22 or 24 seconds, whatever it was, before Fabinho cracked it into the top corner at the other end, I sat there in a sulk on this very couch going, fuck, it's going to be ruled out for a VAR, it's going to be offside, this is ridiculous, like, they're going to go back, they're going to chalk it out. He smashed it in the top corner, and I was saying, oh, he's celebrating, but it's going to go back, it's ridiculous. And then there was a goal given, and I was thinking, that's probably the biggest goal of our season. And I've not enjoyed it at all, because there was a big weight over it that it was about to be chalked off, and Man City were about to be awarded the penalty. And I mean, I don't like celebrating decisions on a big purple screen. That's ridiculous. Like, I much prefer celebrating moments of football, if that makes sense.
I completely agree. But VAR, just to play devil's advocate here, obviously we're both not fans of how it's being used, but it was brought in for the right reasons, right? To get every decision right. So what's more important, the spectacle or the results for the correct, the right result? Getting the result right, I mean, or the viewer spectacle?
It's what's more important for who?
For the viewer.
What do you think? Spectacle, man, it's all about the spectacle for the viewer.
Is everyone? Well, is it all about the spectacle for everyone?
Okay, let me ask you this: has VAR stopped people talking about questionable decisions?
It's enhanced it more than ever.
So it's made decisions less clear, less obvious, less concise.
It definitely
more
has.
Divisive, and it's made the viewing less enjoyable.
That's what we've said all along: is that it's being used in completely the wrong way. And it should be something that we should not be talking about, because it's used so smoothly that it's like you're not talking about those decisions. It's just so natural, but it's being used in a way that is making itself the talking point every single week. Very quickly, we're gonna hammer a couple of decisions. Yeah.
John Lundstram for Sheffield United.
Absolutely shocking. Robbed of a win.
I mean,
disgraceful.
People were talking about where the offside lines were going to be drawn, and people said maybe, is there going to be daylight? Okay, people were talking about where the offside line was going to be drawn last season, people were saying, is it going to be daylight between the two players? Do you have to be obviously offside? Is it any part of your body in line counter? They've gone the other way, where they've said if any part of your body is on the wrong side, essentially, is offside. Any part you can score with is deemed offside. But I mean, there was daylight on the other side in John Lundstram's case, because the defender was leaning backwards, and Lundstram was also leaning backwards. So I mean, there was a clear gap between the players, that Lundstram was definitely onside, and the defender was definitely on goal side. But because his toe was sticking forwards on this part, that he was He was given off, but I mean, it's just ridiculous. He was so far onside, and even if his toe, by whatever lines you draw, is offside, I mean his big toe. If he was wearing size 7 instead of size 8, he'd be onside.
Yeah, I thought it was outrageous. Like I saw the incident, and I looked at all the images on Twitter afterwards as well. Like there's no
never historically in a game of football could that have been considered genuinely offside.
It's meant to be the my understanding of offside is that if the player is moving forward towards the ball and it's that part of his body, but if it's his big toe, there's no way it can be that because it has to be the upper body.
He's not getting any advantage by leaning backwards.
No, he's not. That's it's a disgrace.
Speaking of how lines were drawn, we'll go back to Liverpool very quickly.
Yeah.
Mo Salah, you reckon he was offside?
Yeah.
And I know I spoke a little bit about this in my other video, which may or may not have actually been published by the time that this goes out. But it's incredibly difficult to draw the way they want to do it, where they have a third-party software company that do these lines for them. With the camera angle at Anfield that everyone's been using on Twitter, the camera is clearly at an angle to the players. It's not lined up alongside perfectly their bellies looking across the line.
It's impossible.
It's not the view the linesman would have had.
Yeah.
So, firstly, it's not going to be possible to demonstrate the line that the linesman can see on a 3D image from a height at an angle. You're not going to be able to convert that 3D line into a 2D line, and you can't bend that line on a 2D image the way it should be to factor in the height and the angle. And as much as the third-party software system may have decided that he was onside, that's a decision the official came to as well, because he was there in line. I mean, at the moment we thought that the video evidence would clear up any inconsistencies that the officials had, where people could look at it and say, oh, he's clearly offside. But I mean, it doesn't seem to be being used for cases that are debatable well. Or at least it's not being marketed that way. We spoke about how it's used in cricket before, where if it's within a certain distance, it's the on-field call. And very, very quickly it should be able to check. It should just pop up on the screen, decision on-field referee. Very, very quickly. It shouldn't be no goal or onside. It shouldn't even be... Oh, I spoke about reviews before, and I'd be a big fan of reviews.
Yeah.
I mean, the City players were not appealing for offside when the goal went in. None of them. I mean, they were all.
It was just VAR that
they were all appealing
for
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it suddenly became a talking point afterwards. But I mean, he wasn't offside.
The images that I saw of it was body ahead of the.
But that's because of the way that the line was drawn, and the line that was drawn was either in line with the grass on the pitch, so it's then at the wrong angle for the camera because the camera's at an angle, or it was drawn alongside the line of the players or the defenders, and then it's not properly in line with the grass. What I'm saying is that the line that we see isn't actually the determining factor in whether they're offside or not.
What are we going to do to get it right then? Like how are we going to get outside this?
Things that are that marginal cannot be changed. The only person, the best person to judge that
is the ref.
Is the linesman that is running alongside the last line of defenders that can hear and can see the moment the ball is kicked.
Should it go back to their call, like an umpire's call?
It should just stay there unless it's actively challenged, unless it can be proven to be incorrect. Like 100%.
But like we spoke about in cricket before, where there's that grey area
ambiguity
of umpire's call. So it should be the same thing in football. It definitely should.
But there's also a review system in cricket. Yeah, football's going like the NFL, where they automatically review every goal at the minute.
But again, in cricket, when it's umpire's call, you can't review it. It doesn't matter what the review is for. Like that's
well, you can review it. And that's the end.
That's the end. Yeah.
So the way the NFL works is that if they have so many assistants all over the place, they've got about 10 referees per game, and if any referee sees anything wrong while the play is happening, they launch a flag into the sky, a yellow thing that indicates that there may be a foul or that there's an advantage essentially being played to one team.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the play, they'll enforce the penalty. But at the end, whenever any team scores a touchdown in the NFL, it is checked on the video monitor to see if it should be upheld or not.
Right.
And that's the way we're going with VAR. That every single goal needs to be checked. and it's not clearing things up. It's not making things better. I know that Ashley Barnes had one incorrectly ruled off the other day, but I mean, there was a massive appeal from the opposing players for it because they all knew he was offside. Normally, when people are offside or they're breaking the rules in football, the other team are well aware of it and are very quick to highlight it. And I think I've made this point before, was if the other team are not actively protesting a decision on field, it can't be that close that it needs to, like, it is that close that it.
In cricket with the LBW and caught behind law, you have to appeal.
You've got to appeal for every
If you unless it's bold, like obviously that's but like you have to appeal for it to be given.
Yeah. And maybe that's the way we have to go in football.
It might be.
Leave the referees referee the game, and if there's something that you disagree with at the end of a play, even the way they do it in tennis, they continue playing the point.
And then they go back to it.
And then they say, I want to challenge that call.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened in Liverpool City for the first handball, Sergio Aguero stopped playing, ran over to the ref and was complaining. Surely he knew it was going to be checked by VAR. But I don't know, man, he switched off. Very quickly, man. International break.
Yeah.
European Championship qualifiers.
Yeah.
You looking forward to them?
No. Are you?
No.
Are you going to watch them?
I'll watch Ireland. You know, they've got a massive game against Denmark. It's must win. It's pretty easy. Win, go to Euro.
Yeah.
Go to the Euros.
Do you know what?
Lose, go to the playoffs.
I'll watch Ireland as well.
It's
and
interesting.
I don't usually do.
But I mean, it's not worth missing 2 weeks of the Premier League, though.
No, of course not. And we touched on this last time, and we will do a main feature on it in the future. But like, it's just not the time to break for the international season.
No, it's not.
Like, you're really, really, really breaking up what's happening in the Premier League. The only good thing about this time is that you can sack your manager.
Well, for some, yeah.
And get a new man in and give him enough time to get ready for the next. I mean,
it's the European Championships as well. It's not even the World Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, the World Cup is the best competition in the whole world. The second best is the Champions League. You could compare the European Championships with the Europa League in a way.
You certainly could. There'd be a strong argument for that. Yeah.
I mean,
like
you'd watch any group stage game in the World Cup.
Like I said on last week's pod, literally glued to it. I don't care if it's Morocco versus Iran. I'm watching it.
Mexico, Senegal, whoever it is.
Exactly, whatever it is.
But I mean, you wouldn't sit down and you wouldn't watch the Netherlands play Serbia in the Euros.
The only in the last Euros, I was kind of watching them if I had time to spare. Like, it wasn't something that I would actively seeking out. Whereas with the World Cup, it was like during work, I have to watch.
You have to.
The World Cup. I don't care whatever game it is. I'm watching it.
I didn't watch the Europa League final last year.
Of course not. The only time I've watched the Europa League is when Arsenal have been in it.
Yeah.
And I will not watch, like,
Liverpool aren't in it anymore, so thankfully I don't have to watch it.
Who apart from sports journalists watches Europa Leagues, and fans of the teams playing watches a Europa League game?
I don't know, but I mean, we spoke a bit last time out about how we want to restructure the international game. I think maybe next week on the pod we'll come back with a definitive answer as to how we'd want
for sure
the international break to be. And speaking of next week's pod, we've got a fantastic pod to look forward to. We're doing an hour-long feature special on the concept of modern day sports washing. Okay. We're telling you this now. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. We're going to be building towards it all week. We're going to be looking at sports washing across the globe, across football, across sports. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic piece. We haven't done it yet, but I can tell you already, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. We're buzzing for it. We've been talking about it all day, much more than about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to be brilliant. Make sure you stay tuned for next week's pod. Sports washing in football, especially, and in sports around the world. This has been the Premier Football Podcast. Emphasis on Premier. The best, the elite sports podcast. I know you said on Twitter this week that someone else was doing a great podcast. This is not a great podcast. This is the Premier Podcast.
Absolutely.
Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Guys, you know what to do. We have gained a YouTube subscriber in the last week.
In the last day.
Guys, give us some more YouTube subscribers. Please, 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 please. Okay? Subscribe on YouTube. We're not going to ask you to do anything else. Okay? We're on the other platforms. Don't worry about them. Go to YouTube. Subscribe. You will love us. Okay? Thank you very much for joining us. And we'll see you next time, mate. Cheers.